I entered this world at what you may consider to be the worst conceivable timing. The marriage of my parents was already fraying, and my presence did not exactly improve things. Nicole here, my father, Tom, wasn't exactly happy when Mom said she was expecting. "You planned this, didn't you, Sarah?" he said amid one of their arguments. "Got pregnant on intention just to trap me here." Though I was not old enough to really recall it, Mom has told this tale so many times that I can practically see it happening. Mom constantly claimed Dad lacked the diligence and responsibility needed to be a true family man. He would sooner spend his money on whatever appealed to him than save for our future. For 4 long years after I was born, their conflicts reverberated throughout our little dwelling. Sometimes they were driven by money. About Dad's late evenings out occasionally about me. Everything appeared to set off another explosive battle. They officially declared it when I turned 5 and got divorced. Dad left not to see how that turned out. He disappeared just now. None of farewell, no forwarding address, not one single payment for child support. Except for Mom's mounting animosity and the hole he left in our life, it was as though he never existed. "Your father is nothing but a selfish coward," Mom would tell me each time I asked about him. "Real men do not desert their children." Every time his name surfaced, she would get this harsh expression in her eyes, and finally I learned to stop asking. My grandma Eleanor was the last link I had left to Dad's side of the family. Mom and she hated one another. Grandma Eleanor claimed Mom had pushed Dad away with her persistent nagging about money and responsibilities, therefore contributing to the broken marriage. Mom, in turn, couldn't even tolerate Grandma being in the same room. Mom would drive me to Grandma Eleanor's house, essentially drop me at the door, and leave without ever walking inside when it was time for my visits. But once one was inside, things changed. Grandma Eleanor would give me cozy embraces and share tales of Dad's early years. She would smile quietly and brush her fingers through my hair. "You look just like your father, sweetheart," she would say. "You have his eyes, his smile, even that small dimple when you laugh." 3 years elapsed in a haze of weekend visits to Grandma Eleanor's residence, a house bursting with stories, pastries, and the comfort I couldn't find at home. By the time I was 8, I had developed a sort of schedule. Weekdays with Mom, who still harbors resentment about Dad, and those priceless weekends with Grandma, who never stopped dreaming he would come back. But one Tuesday in October, it was raining and everything changed. Mom turned pale when she answered a phone. "Get your coat, Nicole," she murmured, her voice abnormally hushed. "Grandma Eleanor would like to visit us both." That's crucial. This time the motivation for Grandma's house was different. Mom would normally just drop me off and hurry away. She parked the car today, though, and really walked with me to the door. There was a flaw. I could sense it in the quiet between us, thick. Smaller somehow, Grandma Eleanor lay in her bed, surrounded with papers. Her face had a grayish hue that terrified me, and her often immaculate silver hair was disheveled. She reached out her tiny hands and grinned, though, when she spotted us. Her voice softer than I had ever heard. "Sarah, Nicole, thank you for coming," she added. "Please sit down, both of you." Mom genuinely sat down without protest, which was when I realized this was quite serious. There also was Mr. Peterson, Grandma Eleanor's attorney, silently in the corner like a mournful monument. Grandma continued, "I need to discuss something important," first glancing at Mom, then at me. "I'm not well, and I have to make sure everything is in correct order." She stopped to catch her air. "My house and part of my savings will go to your Aunt Linda, Nicole. But I've set up something special for you." I remember playing with the hem of my sweater, not really understanding what was happening. Adult conversations about arrangements and papers always bored me, but I knew I was supposed to pay attention. "I'm creating an educational fund for Nicole," Grandma continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke about her plans. It will cover her college expenses when she turns 18. Mr. Peterson here will manage it until then." Mom's posture changed at these words. She sat up straighter, her eyes widening slightly. I noticed her hands, usually fidgety with anxiety, grow still in her lap. The money can only be accessed for educational purposes, and Nicole will have full control of it when she turns 18, Mr. Peterson added, stepping forward with some papers. Mrs. Eleanor has been very specific about these terms. I sat there, swinging my legs back and forth, more interested in the pattern of the wallpaper than in what they were discussing. College seemed like something from another lifetime. I was more concerned about my upcoming spelling test and whether Jenny Martinez would invite me to her birthday party. "Everything is arranged, Sarah," Grandma said, reaching for Mom's hand. For once, Mom didn't pull away. "I want to make sure my granddaughter has opportunities, regardless of everything else." The unspoken mention of Dad hung in the air between them. After signing some papers and saying our goodbyes, Mom and I drove home in silence. But this silence felt different from our usual tense quiet. It was almost peaceful. As we pulled into our driveway, Mom turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Well," she said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips, "it seems at least one person in your father's family turned out to be decent after all." I didn't fully grasp the significance of that day until much later. At 8 years old, all I knew was that Grandma Eleanor had done something nice for me, and for once, Mom wasn't angry about it. The concept of college money meant nothing to me then. I was more excited about the butterscotch candy Grandma had slipped into my pocket when we left. Grandma Eleanor passed away just a few weeks after our last visit. The funeral was small and quiet, and I noticed Mom actually shed a few tears, though she tried to hide them. With Grandma gone, it felt like the last bridge to my father's world had crumbled away. Life moved on as it always does. Over the next 2 years, Mom started dating a guy named Robert. He seemed nice enough. He had a good job at a bank, drove a nice car, and always brought me small gifts when he came to visit. Mom smiled more when he was around, and I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. Then they decided to get married. I was 10 at the time, and the prospect of having a complete family again made my heart flutter with excitement. But the real news came when Mom told me Robert had a daughter my age named Ashley who would be moving in with us. I remember jumping up and down, my mind filled with visions of sharing secrets, having sleepovers in the same room, and finally having someone to play with who wasn't just a school friend. After years of being an only child in a broken home, the idea of having a sister seemed like a dream come true. The day they moved in, I had decorated our shared room with welcome signs and laid out some of my favorite books and toys to share. Ashley walked in, took one look around, and asked her dad if she could have her own room instead. "I don't want to share with her," she said, not even bothering to lower her voice. "She's not really my sister." That was just the beginning. Ashley quickly staked her claim on Mom's attention. She'd curl up next to her on the couch during movie nights, pushing me to the side. She started calling Mom Mommy within the first week, and Mom's face would light up every time she did. "Mom, want to see my art project?" I'd ask, holding up my drawing. "In a minute, honey," Mom would reply. But that minute never came because Ashley would already be showing Mom her homework or telling her about her day. When I finally broke down and told Mom how I felt, her response cut deep. "Don't be selfish, Nicole," she said, barely looking up from helping Ashley with her homework. "Ashley lost her mother when she was very young. She needs extra attention and a woman's love. You should understand that. But what about my love?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and retreated to my newly silent room, where Ashley's empty bed served as a constant reminder that I wasn't enough. Not for my father. And now, it seemed, not for my mother either. The changes in our family happened so gradually that, at first, I barely noticed them. But looking back now, I can see how each small moment added up to create an ever-widening gap between me and my mother. It started with shopping trips. Mom would come home with bags full of designer clothes for Ashley, fancy jeans, brand-name sneakers, cute tops from expensive stores. Meanwhile, I got my clothes from department store sales and discount outlets. Ashley needs to maintain a certain appearance at her new school, Mom would say when I pointed out the difference. Besides, you're not as interested in fashion as she is. Then came the biggest bombshell. They were sending Ashley to Riverside Prep, the expensive private school across town. I still remember the day they announced it over dinner. Ashley's test scores are exceptional, Robert said proudly. She needs a more challenging academic environment. What about me? I asked, pushing my peas around my plate. Could I go to Riverside too? Mom and Robert exchanged that look I'd come to hate, the one that meant they'd already discussed this without me. Honey, you're doing fine at Lincoln Public, Mom said. Ashley has different needs. She's really gifted, you know. The regular program suits you better. That night, I cried into my pillow until I had no tears left. But something changed in me after that. As the years passed, I stopped trying to compete for Mom's attention. I stopped showing her my report cards, stopped telling her about my achievements, stopped hoping she'd notice me. By 15, I'd accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I threw myself into my studies at Lincoln Public, not for them, but for myself. I joined the debate team, competed in science fairs, and maintained straight A's. My teachers would write glowing comments on my papers. Exceptional analysis, Nicole. Outstanding work. You have a bright future ahead. Meanwhile, at home, dinner conversations revolved around Ashley's latest achievements at Riverside Prep, her participation in the Model UN conference, her selection for the advanced placement program, her tennis tournaments against other private schools. Ashley's English teacher says she has real potential as a writer, Mom would gush. She gets straight A's without even trying, Robert would add proudly. I'd sit there quietly, eating my dinner, thinking about my own straight A's, about how I'd just won first place in the regional science fair, about how my debate team coach wanted me to lead the team next year. But I kept these thoughts to myself. What was the point of sharing them? My achievements at a public school couldn't possibly compare to Ashley's private school accomplishments, at least not in their eyes. Still, there were moments, like when Mom and Robert would attend every single one of Ashley's tennis matches, but couldn't make it to my debate team finals, that the old hurt would surface. But I'd learned to push it down, to focus on what I could control. I had my education, my goals, and thanks to Grandma Eleanor's foresight, I had a future that was mine alone. Senior year flew by in a whirlwind of college applications and scholarship essays. As graduation approached, I found myself sitting at my desk late into the night, surrounded by brochures from different universities. My grades had opened up a lot of possibilities. I was particularly excited about State University's full scholarship program and had already been pre-approved based on my academic record. You don't have to take the scholarship route, you know. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Martinez, had told me, with your grandmother's college fund, you could attend any school you want. But I had bigger plans for that money. I want to be smart about it, I explained to her. If I can get a full scholarship, I can save the fund for a down payment on a house after graduation. Mrs. Martinez had smiled at that. Always thinking ahead, aren't you, Nicole? 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, Mom called me down for what she termed a family meeting. I found them all sitting in the living room, Mom perched nervously on the edge of her favorite armchair, Robert looking serious on the couch, and Ashley beside him, not quite meeting my eyes. "Sit down, Nicole," Mom said, patting the ottoman across from her. "We need to discuss something important." I sat, noting how formal everything felt. Usually, family discussions happened over dinner or in passing, never with this kind of setup. As you know, Mom began, Ashley is graduating this year, too. She paused, glancing at my stepsister. We've been looking at colleges. I got accepted to Princeton, Ashley interrupted, finally looking at me. It's my dream school. That's congratulations, I said, not sure why this required a family meeting. The thing is, Robert jumped in. Even with Ashley's excellent education at Riverside Prep, her grades don't quite qualify her for a full scholarship. Mom leaned forward. We've spent so much on her private school education, and it's been worth every penny. But we just don't have the resources for Princeton's tuition. I sat there, still not understanding why they were telling me this. Then Mom dropped the bomb. We were hoping, since you have your grandmother's college fund, you might be willing to share it with Ashley. The room went silent. I stared at Mom, waiting for her to say she was joking, but her face remained serious, expectant even. Share my college fund? I repeated slowly. The one Grandma Eleanor set up specifically for my education? You're getting a full scholarship anyway, Ashley said, as if that justified everything. You don't even need the money. We're family, Mom added softly. Family helps each other. I sat there, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The college fund, my safety net, my future, my grandmother's last gift to me. They wanted me to hand it over to Ashley. The same Ashley who'd spent years making sure I knew I wasn't really family. The same Ashley who got everything while I got the leftovers. No. The word came out of my mouth before I could even process the full weight of what they were asking. Absolutely not. What do you mean, no? Mom's voice took on that sharp edge I'd grown to know so well. I mean, no. This money was left to me by my grandmother. It's mine, and I'm going to use it for my future. Robert's face turned red. Do you hear how selfish she sounds, Sarah? This is exactly what I've been talking about for years. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Selfish? That's rich coming from you guys. Watch your tone, young lady, Robert snapped. You've always been jealous of Ashley, always trying to compete with her, and now you're taking your revenge by denying her a chance at a good education. The absurdity of his statement made me laugh again, though there was no humor in it. Jealous? Of what exactly? Of how you've given her everything while treating me like an afterthought. And by the way, if she's as brilliant as you've always claimed, why didn't she earn a scholarship like I did? Ashley's face crumpled and tears started streaming down her cheeks. She jumped up from the couch and ran upstairs, her dramatic exit punctuated by the slamming of her bedroom door. How dare you? Mom's voice was quiet, dangerous. How dare you be so cruel? Cruel? I'm being cruel. I stood up, my hands shaking. You're the ones trying to take away my college fund. Mom stood too, her face hard. Well, then let me make this very clear. You have 2 weeks until your birthday to change your mind. If you don't agree to share that money with your sister, you can find somewhere else to live. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. What? You're kicking me out? This is my house, too. No, Nicole, it's not. Mom's voice was cold. This house is in my name. You'll be 18, an adult. I'm not legally obligated to support you anymore. I can't believe this, I whispered. I can't believe you're choosing her over me. Again. You're choosing money over family, Robert shot back. Family? I practically spat the word. When have you ever treated me like family? They had no answer for that. Instead, Mom just said, 2 weeks, Nicole. Think carefully about your choice. The next 3 days were like living in a ghost town where I was the only ghost. No one spoke to me at breakfast. My questions at dinner were met with silence. Ashley acted like I was invisible, and Mom and Robert treated me like an unwelcome house guest who had overstayed their welcome. I ate my meals in my room, spent my free time at the library, and tried to make myself as scarce as possible. But every night, lying in my bed, I could hear them in the living room, talking, laughing, watching TV together. A happy family of 3 with no room for a fourth. For days after that disastrous family meeting, I called Mr. Peterson, my grandmother's lawyer. My hands were shaking as I dialed his number, but his warm, familiar voice helped calm my nerves. "Nicole, I was just thinking about you. Your 18th birthday is coming up soon." "Yes, Mr. Peterson, that's actually why I'm calling." I took a deep breath and told him everything, the demand for money, the ultimatum, all of it. He listened quietly until I finished, then cleared his throat. "Those funds are legally yours to control the moment you turn 18, Nicole. Your grandmother was very specific about that, and frankly, I think she suspected something like this might happen someday." "What do you mean?" "Let's just say she knew her son's ex-wife very well." He paused. "Now, about your living situation. Look, here's what I suggest. Pick your college first, preferably one in a different city. Then find an apartment nearby. I can help you with the paperwork. You won't be able to access the funds until your birthday, but we can get everything set up in advance." I spent that afternoon researching apartments near State University, where I'd already been accepted with a full scholarship. By evening, I'd found a small but decent place just a 10-minute walk from campus. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was willing to hold it for me with just a promise of payment on my birthday. For the next week, I quietly packed my life into boxes, one small piece at a time. I didn't want anyone to notice what I was doing. Each night, after everyone was asleep, I'd pack another box and hide it in my closet. Photos, books, clothes. My life condensed into cardboard containers. On the morning of my 18th birthday, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Well," she asked, arms crossed, "have you made your decision?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt strangely calm. "Yes, I have. The answer is still no." "Then you know what that means?" Her voice was hard. "I want you out of this house today." "Okay," I said simply. I think my calm acceptance threw her off. She probably expected tears or begging. Instead, I went upstairs, got my pre-packed boxes, and called the taxi I'd scheduled the day before. 20 minutes later, I was turning the key in the lock of my new apartment. The first thing I did was call Mr. Peterson, who had all the paperwork ready. By noon, I had access to my grandmother's fund. By 1 o'clock, I'd paid my first month's rent and security deposit to Mrs. Chen. That afternoon, I walked to the local coffee shop where I'd applied for a job the week before. The manager, Mike, had already agreed to hire me for the summer before college started. My apartment was small, just a studio with a kitchenette, but it was mine. That night, as I sat on my newly purchased air mattress, eating takeout and watching the sunset through my single window, I felt something unexpected: freedom. 2 weeks into my new life, I was scrolling through Facebook during my coffee shop break when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Friends from high school were messaging me. "Have you seen your mom's post? Are you okay? What's going on?" With shaking hands, I pulled up Mom's page, and there it was, a long, dramatic post about ungrateful children and family loyalty. "My daughter has broken our hearts," she wrote. "After everything we've done for her, she selfishly refused to help her sister get a college education. Instead, she's hoarding money from her grandmother while her sister's dreams are put on hold. I never thought I'd raise such a selfish, heartless child." The comments below were worse. Relatives I barely knew were chiming in. How could she be so ungrateful? Family should come first. What a spoiled brat. I sat there in the break room, my coffee getting cold, as anger and hurt battled inside me. Then something snapped. If Mom wanted to air our dirty laundry on social media, fine. Let's tell the whole story. I opened my laptop and started typing. Since my mother has chosen to make our private family matters public, let me share my side of the story. Yes, I refused to give my stepsister my college fund, money that my grandmother specifically left for my education. What my mother forgot to mention is that she gave me an ultimatum: either give up my inheritance or get kicked out of the house on my 18th birthday. She carried out that threat exactly. I had to leave as I wouldn't be giving away lawfully owned money. I watched years while my stepsister attended private school, while I attended public ones. While I had department shop leftovers, I saw her pick pricey outfits. I'm glad I worked hard, got straight A's, and qualified for a full scholarship in college. Apparently, though, that wasn't enough. They craved my inheritance as well. Yes, I decided to keep the present from my grandmother to me. Indeed, I am working, living on my own right now, getting ready for college. Chose not this scenario, though. When her own daughter was expelled on her birthday, my mother did. I went back to work after hitting post. The answer was overwhelming by the end of my shift. Support comments from former instructors, neighbors, even some of Mom's old friends were leaving. Years of knowing our family, people began to tell tales of how they had observed the favoritism but never spoken out about it. That evening my phone started to ring. On the screen, Mom's name flashed. Her hiss, "How dare you?" When I responded, "Do you find this to be embarrassing?" Mrs. Peterson from the church hardly looks at me any longer. Of my pals, half are wondering about my parenting. "Maybe they should," I responded gently. "You kicked your daughter for not sharing her inheritance. What sort of parent does that?" "I did everything for you." "Mom, no, you took care of Ashley in all respects, and that's good. She is your daughter today. But I am finished. Bye, Mom." I blocked her number hanging up. I then blocked her along with Robert and Ashley on all social media. It was shockingly simple, like removing years of dead weight I had been dragging about. I am in my first semester at State University, learning business management right now. Every day my modest abode seems more like home. Though those ideas come fewer and less often, sometimes I consider Mom, Robert, and Ashley. On my desk is Grandma Eleanor's picture. Occasionally I swear she is proudly smiling at me. She knew somehow that I would require this money for independence as much as for schooling. I will never forget her giving me the tools to pick my own road,